Marcus Thompson wiped the sweat from his forehead as he hammered the last nail into the wooden sign. The words, "Room for Rent," looked crooked, but it would have to do. Money was tight, and his small two-bedroom house in the college district desperately needed a tenant to help cover the mortgage payments. At 35, Marcus worked as a maintenance supervisor at the local community college. His salary was decent but not enough to keep up with rising costs. After his divorce 2 years ago, he had struggled to make ends meet. The spare bedroom had been collecting dust, filled with boxes of memories he wasn't ready to sort through. That Tuesday morning, as Marcus was leaving for work, he noticed a young woman standing nervously at his front gate. She wore a simple gray hoodie, faded jeans, and carried a worn backpack that looked like it had seen better days. Her long brown hair partially covered her face, and she kept glancing around as if making sure no one was watching her. "Excuse me," she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. "I saw your sign about the room. Is it still available?" Marcus studied her for a moment. She couldn't be more than 20, maybe 21 at most. Everything about her screamed struggling college student, from her secondhand clothes to the way she clutched her backpack protectively. "Yeah, it's still available," Marcus replied, checking his watch. "I'm actually headed to work right now, but I can show you the room tonight if you're interested." "Around 6? The young woman's face lit up with relief. "That would be perfect, thank you so much. I'm Emma, by the way. Emma Johnson." "Marcus Thompson." "Nice to meet you, Emma. You go to the college?" She nodded quickly. "Yes, I'm a junior studying business administration. I really need somewhere quiet to study and, well, somewhere affordable." Marcus noticed how she emphasized the word affordable. He had planned to ask for $400 a month, but something about her desperate expression made him reconsider. "We'll talk about all the details tonight," he said, climbing into his pickup truck. "See you at 6. That evening, Emma arrived exactly on time. Marcus had spent the afternoon clearing out the spare bedroom and giving it a quick clean. The room wasn't fancy, just a single bed, a small desk, and a dresser. But it was clean and had good natural light from the large window. "This is perfect," Emma said, walking around the small space. Her eyes were wide with what looked like genuine appreciation. "It's exactly what I need." They sat at Marcus's kitchen table to discuss the arrangement. Emma pulled out an envelope from her backpack and counted out crisp $20 bills. "I can pay 3 months up front," she said. "Would $300 a month be okay? I know it's not much, but it's all I can manage right now." Marcus was surprised by the upfront payment. Most college students he knew could barely scrape together first month's rent, let alone 3 months in advance. But Emma seemed genuinely worried about money, and something about her reminded him of his younger sister, who had struggled through college years ago. "$300 works," he said, accepting the money. "Kitchen privileges are included, and there's a washer and dryer in the basement you can use. Just keep things clean and no loud parties." Emma smiled for the first time since he'd met her. "Thank you so much, Mr. Thompson. You have no idea how much this means to me. I promise I'll be the perfect tenant." Over the next few days, Marcus barely saw his new housemate. Emma was incredibly quiet, almost ghost-like in her movements around the house. She would leave early in the morning with her backpack and return late in the evening, usually carrying books and what looked like takeout containers from the cheapest restaurants near campus. Marcus began to notice small things about Emma that didn't quite add up. Despite claiming to be short on money, she always seemed to have cash when needed. Her laptop, which she left on the kitchen table one morning, looked expensive and brand new. And sometimes, late at night, he would hear her having hushed phone conversations that sounded more serious than typical college student chatter. "I can't keep doing this," he heard her whisper into her phone one evening. "I need to prove I can make it on my own. Just give me more time." One morning, Marcus was surprised to find Emma in the kitchen at 6 a.m., making coffee and looking like she hadn't slept all night. "Everything okay?" he asked, noticing the dark circles under her eyes. Emma startled, nearly dropping her mug. "Oh, hi, Marcus. Yes, everything's fine. Just had a big exam yesterday and couldn't sleep." But Marcus noticed she was wearing the same clothes from the day before. and there were what looked like tear stains on her cheeks. "You know, if you need to talk about anything, I'm a pretty good listener," Marcus offered. "I know college can be overwhelming." Emma looked at him for a long moment as if considering whether to trust him. "It's complicated," she finally said. "My family, they have certain expectations, and I'm trying to prove that I can succeed without their help. Sometimes it feels impossible." Marcus poured himself coffee and sat across from her. "Independence is important, but there's no shame in accepting help when you need it. Sometimes the people who care about us want to help because they love us, not because they think we're incapable." Emma's eyes filled with tears, but she quickly wiped them away. "You don't understand. My situation is different. If I accept their help, I'll never know if I truly earned anything on my own." That afternoon, while Emma was at classes, Marcus noticed she had left her wallet on the kitchen counter. As he picked it up to put it somewhere safe, several cards fell out. He couldn't help but notice they weren't typical student ID cards or credit cards with low limits. The names on the cards caught his attention, but he quickly gathered them up and placed the wallet on her desk with a note saying he'd found it. Something was definitely not adding up about Emma Johnson, but Marcus decided to respect her privacy. Everyone had their secrets, and she was a good tenant who paid her rent on time and kept to herself. What Marcus didn't know was that Emma had been watching him too. She had noticed his kindness, his willingness to charge her less rent than the room was worth, and his genuine concern for her well-being. For the first time in her life, someone was treating her like a normal person without any expectations or ulterior motives. As the weeks passed, both Marcus and Emma found themselves looking forward to their brief encounters in the kitchen or living room. Neither of them realized how much their simple, honest interactions were about to change both of their lives forever. 3 weeks into their living arrangement, Marcus began to see glimpses of the real Emma beyond her shy exterior. It started with small things. She would leave him fresh coffee in the morning before heading to class, or she would pick up his favorite brand of bread when she went grocery shopping. "You didn't have to do that," Marcus said one evening, finding a plate of homemade cookies on the kitchen counter with a note that simply said, "Thank you for everything." Emma blushed and shrugged. "I like baking when I'm stressed. My grandmother taught me when I was little." She paused, a sad expression crossing her face. "She was the only one who ever treated me like a normal kid." Marcus sensed there was more to that story but didn't push. Instead, he bit into a cookie and his eyes widened. "These are incredible. Where did you learn to bake like this?" "My grandmother had a small bakery before she retired," Emma said, her face brightening. "She used to say that the secret ingredient in any recipe was putting love into what you make." That weekend, Marcus was working on fixing a broken faucet in the bathroom when he heard Emma on the phone again. This time, her voice was clearer, and he couldn't help but overhear. "No, Father, I'm not coming home for the board meeting," she said firmly. "I told you I need to finish this semester on my own terms. Board meeting?" Marcus paused his work, confused. What college student talked about board meetings? "I don't care what the investors think," Emma continued, her voice getting stronger. "This is my life, and I'm proving that I can succeed without the family name opening doors for me." When Emma emerged from her room an hour later, she looked emotionally drained. Marcus was in the kitchen making grilled cheese sandwiches for dinner. "Want one?" he offered, noticing her red eyes. Comfort food helps after difficult conversations. Emma sat at the table and accepted the sandwich gratefully. "You're very kind, Marcus. Most people my age would be out partying or focused on themselves. I'm 35, not exactly your age," Marcus laughed. "And I learned that being kind costs nothing but can mean everything to someone who needs it." Emma took a bite of her sandwich and smiled. "This reminds me of when I was little and our cook would make me simple meals when my parents were traveling for business. I always preferred them to the fancy dinners at home." Marcus noticed how she mentioned having a cook so casually, but her worn clothes and careful spending habits suggested anything but wealth. The contradictions were piling up. The next morning, Marcus was leaving for work when he saw a black luxury car parked across the street. A man in an expensive suit was standing beside it, talking on his phone while watching Marcus's house. When The man noticed Marcus looking. He quickly got into the car and drove away. At work, Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. During his lunch break, he decided to do something he normally wouldn't do. He looked up Emma Johnson online. What he found made his head spin. There were dozens of Emma Johnsons, but none that matched his tenant. However, when he searched for Emma and Business Administration, along with their city name, he found something interesting. An article from the university newspaper mentioned a student who had declined to participate in a feature about successful business students from prominent families. That evening, Emma was cooking dinner when Marcus arrived home. The smell of something delicious filled the house. "I hope you don't mind," she said nervously. "I made enough pasta for two. It's my way of thanking you for being so understanding about everything." They sat down to eat, and Marcus noticed that Emma had set the table with cloth napkins and had even bought flowers for a centerpiece. The presentation was elegant, almost sophisticated. "Emma, can I ask you something?" Marcus said carefully. "That car that was parked outside this morning, do you know anything about that?" Emma's fork stopped halfway to her mouth. She set it down slowly, and Marcus could see her thinking carefully about how to respond. "Sometimes my family worries about me," she said quietly. "They're not used to me living independently. What kind of work does your family do that they can afford to have people check on you?" Emma was silent for a long moment. "My father owns some businesses. He's very protective, especially since I insisted on living like this." Marcus could tell she was choosing her words carefully. "Emma, I want you to know that whatever your situation is, it doesn't change anything here. You're safe, you're welcome, and I respect your privacy." Emma's eyes filled with tears. "You really mean that?" "Of course. Everyone deserves a chance to prove themselves on their own terms." That night, Emma knocked softly on Marcus's bedroom door around 11 p.m. "Marcus, are you awake? I wanted to tell you something." Marcus opened the door to find Emma holding 2 cups of hot chocolate. "I haven't been completely honest with you," she said, handing him a cup. "Not because I wanted to lie, but because I've never had anyone treat me like you do." They sat on the living room couch, and Emma took a deep breath. "My real name is Emma Richardson. My father is David Richardson." Marcus nearly choked on his hot chocolate. Even he knew that name. Richardson Industries was one of the largest corporations in the country. Their name was on buildings, scholarship funds, and charity organizations throughout the city. "Your father is David Richardson? The billionaire David Richardson?" Emma nodded miserably. "I've spent my whole life having people treat me differently. The moment they learn my last name, they either want something from me, or they assume I'm spoiled and haven't earned anything. I wanted to prove that I could succeed based on my own merit." Marcus set down his cup, processing this information. "So when you said you needed somewhere affordable, I meant it. I'm living on what I can earn from a part-time job at the campus bookstore. My father cut me off financially when I refused to join the family business immediately after high school. This is my chance to prove I'm more than just a trust fund baby." Marcus looked at Emma, really looked at her. The expensive laptop, the cash payments, the way she carried herself when she thought no one was watching, it all made sense now. "Why are you telling me this now?" Emma smiled sadly. "Because you're the first person who's ever been kind to me without wanting anything in return. I trust you, Marcus, and I'm hoping that knowing the truth won't change how you see me." Marcus reached over and squeezed her hand gently. "Emma, you're one of the most genuine people I've ever met. Money doesn't change character, and you've got more character than most people I know." For the first time since Marcus had known her, Emma's smile was completely genuine and unguarded. "Thank you for seeing me for who I really am." The morning after Emma's revelation, Marcus woke up feeling like his world had shifted overnight. As he made coffee, he kept glancing at the simple kitchen chair where a billionaire's daughter had sat just hours before, sharing hot chocolate and opening her heart to him. Emma appeared in the kitchen earlier than usual, looking nervous. "I was thinking maybe I should find another place to live," she said quietly. "Now that you know who I am, things might get complicated." Marcus poured her a cup of coffee and shook his head. "Emma, nothing's changed, except now I understand why. You're so determined to prove yourself. If anything, I respect you more for walking away from all that comfort to make your own way. Relief washed over Emma's face. I was so worried you'd treat me differently. The only thing that's different is now I know why you make such incredible cookies, Marcus said with a grin. Professional kitchen training helps. Emma laughed, and Marcus realized it was the first time he'd heard her laugh without holding back. The sound was warm and genuine. Their comfortable routine continued, but Marcus began noticing things he'd missed before. Emma would sometimes slip and mention details about her privileged upbringing, private tutors, family vacations, to places Marcus had only seen in magazines, or casual references to people whose names appeared in business newspapers. One afternoon, Marcus came home from work to find Emma sitting at the kitchen table surrounded by textbooks looking frustrated. "Rough day?" he asked, noting the crumpled papers and her disheveled hair. "I have this huge project due for my business strategy class," Emma said, rubbing her temples. "We have to create a complete business plan for a startup company. Everyone else in my group wants to do something simple, but I keep thinking of all these complex strategies and market analyses that they think are too advanced." Marcus sat down beside her and looked at the scattered notes. Even to his untrained eye, Emma's ideas were sophisticated and well thought out. Her business plan was more detailed than anything he'd seen from college students. "Have you considered that maybe your ideas are advanced because you've been exposed to high-level business thinking your whole life?" Marcus suggested gently. Emma looked up at him, surprised. "I never thought about it that way. I've been trying so hard to forget everything I learned growing up that I didn't realize some of that knowledge might actually be useful." "There's a difference between using what you've learned and having doors opened for you because of your name," Marcus said. "Your knowledge and insights are part of who you are. You earned those through observation and experience." Emma stared at her notes for a moment, then began reorganizing them with renewed confidence. "You're right. I don't have to pretend I don't know things just to prove I'm independent." That weekend brought the first real test of their new understanding. Marcus was working in the garden when a sleek silver sedan pulled into his driveway. A woman in her 50s wearing a designer suit that probably cost more than Marcus's monthly salary stepped out and walked purposefully to the front door. Emma answered the door, and Marcus heard her sharp intake of breath. "Mother, what are you doing here?" "Emma Richardson, you've been hiding out here long enough," the woman said in a crisp, authoritative voice. "Your father is beside himself with worry, and the board members are asking questions about your absence from family events." Marcus continued working in the garden but couldn't help overhearing the conversation. "I'm not hiding, Mother. I'm living my life and getting my education." "In this tiny house?" "Emma, don't be ridiculous. You belong at home, preparing to take your place in the family business." "I'm not ready for that yet. I need to prove to myself that I can succeed on my own merit." Marcus heard footsteps on the porch and looked up to see Emma's mother scanning the neighborhood with obvious disdain. "And who exactly are you proving this to? Your landlord?" The woman's voice dripped with condescension. That's when Marcus decided to intervene. He brushed the dirt off his hands and walked over to introduce himself. "Good afternoon, I'm Marcus. Thompson, you must be Emma's mother." The woman looked him up and down, taking in his work clothes and dirt-stained hands. "Victoria Richardson, and you're the man who's been enabling my daughter's little rebellion?" Marcus felt his jaw tighten at her tone. "I'm the man who's been giving your daughter a safe, affordable place to live while she pursues her education. She's been an excellent tenant and housemate." "I'm sure she has," Victoria replied coolly. "Emma, collect your things. This experiment is over." "No." Emma's voice was quiet but firm. "I'm not leaving." Victoria's expression hardened. "Emma, you're being childish. Your trust fund will be released when you turn 25 regardless, so this exercise in poverty serves no purpose." "It serves the purpose of letting me discover who I am when I'm not surrounded by people who only care about my last name," Emma shot back. Marcus watched the exchange, impressed by Emma's strength in standing up to her intimidating mother. "Mr. Thompson, Victoria turned to him with a calculating look. I'm sure we can come to some arrangement. What would it take for you to encourage Emma to return home where she belongs? The implication was clear. She was offering to pay him off. Marcus felt anger rise in his chest. Mrs. Richardson, with all due respect, Emma is an adult who's capable of making her own decisions. She's welcome to stay here as long as she chooses to. Victoria's eyes narrowed. I see. And I suppose you have no ulterior motives in this arrangement? A working-class man housing a naive young billionaire? Emma stepped forward, her face flushed with anger. Mother, stop it. Marcus has been nothing but respectful and kind. He's been more supportive of my goals than anyone in our family has ever been. Emma, you don't understand how the world works. People like him. People like him what? Emma interrupted. People who work hard, treat others with respect, and don't judge someone based on their bank account? Maybe I should be asking, what's wrong with people like us? Marcus had never seen Emma so fired up. The shy, uncertain girl had transformed into a confident young woman defending what she believed in. Victoria looked between Emma and Marcus, clearly calculating her next move. This isn't over, Emma. Your father won't be as patient as I've been. After Victoria left, Emma sat on the porch steps, shaking slightly from the confrontation. I'm sorry about that, she said to Marcus. My mother can be intense. Marcus sat beside her. You stood up for yourself beautifully. And for what it's worth, I think you're doing exactly what you should be doing. Emma leaned against his shoulder, and Marcus felt something shift between them. This wasn't just a landlord-tenant relationship anymore. They were becoming real friends, maybe even something more. Marcus, you should know that my family won't give up easily. Being around me might become complicated. Marcus looked down at her, seeing both vulnerability and determination in her eyes. Emma, I've lived a pretty simple life up until now. Maybe a little complication is exactly what I need. In the weeks following Victoria Richardson's visit, the dynamic between Marcus and Emma shifted in ways neither of them had expected. Emma seemed more relaxed now that her secret was out, and Marcus found himself looking forward to their evening conversations over dinner. Emma had started cooking more elaborate meals, claiming it helped her de-stress from school. Marcus suspected it was also her way of contributing more to their shared living space. Tonight she was making something that smelled incredible. What's that amazing smell? Marcus asked, walking into the kitchen after work. Coco vin, Emma replied, stirring a pot on the stove. My grandmother's recipe. She learned it when she lived in France as a young woman. Marcus raised an eyebrow. Your grandmother lived in France? Emma blushed. She married my grandfather when he was working overseas for the company. She always said those were the happiest years of her life, before all the business responsibilities took over. Marcus washed his hands and stood beside her at the stove. Need any help? Could you set the table? And maybe open that bottle of wine on the counter? As they worked together in the kitchen, Marcus noticed how naturally they moved around each other, as if they'd been doing this for years instead of just a few months. Emma had bought real wine glasses and cloth napkins, transforming their simple kitchen into something that felt intimate and special. Over dinner, Emma told him about her business class presentation. I ended up using some of those advanced strategies we talked about. My professor was impressed, but I could tell some of my classmates thought I was showing off. Were you showing off? Marcus asked with a teasing smile. Emma considered the question seriously, maybe a little. But you know what? I realized I was tired of pretending to know less than I do just to fit in. Good for you. There's nothing wrong with being smart and capable. After dinner, they sat on the front porch with their wine, something that had become a regular evening routine. The neighborhood was quiet, with only the sound of crickets and the occasional car passing by. Marcus, can I ask you something personal? Emma said, swirling her wine in her glass. Shoot. What happened with your divorce? You never talk about it, but I see how carefully you handle relationships now. Marcus was quiet for a moment, considering how much to share. Sarah and I got married young. We thought we wanted the same things, but it turned out we were just comfortable with each other. When things got difficult financially, we realized we didn't have much else holding us together. Emma listened without judgment, waiting for him to continue. She wanted things I couldn't provide: a bigger house, expensive vacations, the lifestyle she saw her friends having. I was working as much as I could, but it never felt like enough. Eventually, she found someone who could give her those things. I'm sorry, Emma said softly. That must have been really painful. It was, but honestly, we were both pretending to be happy for the last couple years. The divorce was almost a relief. Marcus looked at Emma. What about you? Any serious relationships in your past? Emma laughed, but there was no humor in it. It's hard to have genuine relationships when you're never sure if someone likes you, or your trust fund. I dated a guy my sophomore year who seemed different, but it turned out he was planning to ask my father for an internship. When I found out, I realized I couldn't trust my own judgment about people's motives. Is that why you were so nervous when you first moved in here? Partly. I was also nervous because I'd never lived independently before. I went from my parents' house to a college dorm, and even there I had a single room and a meal plan my father paid for. This is the first time I've had to budget for groceries and utilities and all those normal things people take for granted. Marcus smiled. You've adapted pretty well. Your budgeting spreadsheet on the kitchen counter is more detailed than anything I've ever created. You notice that? Emma looked embarrassed. Emma, you color code your expenses by category and have formulas, calculating your monthly savings rate. It's impressive, even if it's slightly over-engineered for a college student's budget. They laughed together, and Marcus realized how much he enjoyed making Emma smile. Her whole face lit up when she was genuinely happy, transforming her from merely pretty to absolutely radiant. Their peaceful evening was interrupted by the sound of a car pulling up outside. Both of them tensed, expecting another visit from Emma's family. Instead, a pizza delivery car parked across the street and they relaxed. I should probably warn you, Emma said, turning serious. My father's birthday is next week, and there's always a big family celebration. He's been calling me every day, insisting I come home for it. Are you going to go? I don't know. Part of me wants to see him and show him that I'm doing well on my own. But part of me is afraid he'll find some way to convince me to give up all this progress I've made. Marcus reached over and took her hand. Whatever you decide, just make sure it's what you want, not what you think you should do. Emma looked down at their joined hands, and Marcus realized this was the first time he'd touched her beyond casual, friendly contact. Her skin was soft and she didn't pull away. Marcus, I need to tell you something else, she said, her voice quieter now. My feelings about living here have become complicated. Marcus's heart rate increased. Complicated how? When I moved in, I was just looking for a safe, affordable place to hide from my family's expectations. I never expected to care about my landlord as much as I've come to care about you. The air between them felt charged with possibility. Marcus had been fighting his growing attraction to Emma for weeks, telling himself it would be inappropriate and complicated. But looking into her eyes now, he realized she was feeling the same thing. Emma, I need you to know that I've never taken advantage of a tenant before. I never would. But these past few months, spending time with you, getting to know the real you. What are you saying? Emma asked, though her smile suggested she already knew. I'm saying that somewhere along the way, this stopped being just a landlord-tenant situation for me too. Emma moved closer to him on the porch swing. So what do we do about that? Marcus looked into her eyes, seeing warmth and genuine affection. I guess we figure it out as we go. When Emma leaned in and kissed him, it felt like the most natural thing in the world. The kiss was soft and sweet, full of all the feelings they'd been carefully dancing around for weeks. When they broke apart, Emma rested her forehead against his. I've never felt this way about anyone before. Neither have I, Marcus admitted. At least not like this. They sat together in comfortable silence, both of them aware that they'd crossed a line that would change everything between them. The shy student and her kind landlord had become something much more complicated and infinitely more meaningful. As the night grew cooler, they moved inside, neither wanting the evening to end. For the first time since Emma had moved in, Marcus felt like he had found not just a good tenant, but someone who might become an integral part of his life. The morning after their first kiss, Marcus woke up with a mixture of excitement and worry. Emma was already in the kitchen when he came downstairs, making coffee with a smile that could have powered the entire house. "Good morning," she said, handing him a mug. "I was thinking we should talk about what happened last night." Marcus accepted the coffee gratefully. "I was hoping you weren't having second thoughts." "No second thoughts," Emma said firmly. "But I want to be honest about what this might mean. My family situation is complicated, and if they find out about us, what would happen?" Emma sat down across from him at the kitchen table. "My father can be very protective and very controlling. He's already suspicious about why I'm choosing to live here instead of coming home. If he thinks you're taking advantage of me in any way, and what about what you think? Do you think I'm taking advantage of you?" Emma reached across the table and took his hand. "Marcus, you're the first person who's ever treated me like a normal woman instead of a business opportunity, or a prize to be won. If anyone's being taken advantage of, it's you putting up with all my family drama." Their conversation was interrupted by Emma's phone buzzing with a text message. She glanced at it, and her expression immediately changed. "What's wrong?" Marcus asked. "My father. He says he's driving down here this afternoon to talk to me about his birthday party. He wants to meet at some fancy restaurant downtown." Marcus could see the tension building in Emma's shoulders. "Do you want me to come with you?" Emma looked at him in surprise. "You'd do that? It wouldn't be pleasant. My father can be intimidating. Emma, if we're going to try to make this work between us, I can't hide from your family forever. Besides, maybe it's time someone met David Richardson and saw you as the incredible woman you are, not just as his daughter." Emma's eyes filled with tears. "You'd really face my father for me?" "I'd face a lot more than that for you." They spent the morning trying to act normally, but both of them were nervous about the upcoming confrontation. Emma changed clothes 3 times, finally settling on a simple blue dress that Marcus thought made her look professional, but not like she was trying too hard to impress her father. At 2:00, they drove downtown to the restaurant David Richardson had chosen. It was the kind of place where Marcus had never eaten, the type of establishment where the menu didn't list prices and the waiters wore formal uniforms. David Richardson was already seated at a corner table when they arrived. Marcus had seen his picture in business magazines, but in person, the man was even more imposing. He was tall, silver-haired, and carried himself with the confidence of someone accustomed to being the most powerful person in any room. "Emma," he said, standing to embrace his daughter, "you look well, though I notice you've lost weight." "Hello, father," Emma replied, accepting his hug but keeping it brief. "I'd like you to meet Marcus Thompson." "Marcus, this is my father, David." "Richardson." David's handshake was firm and assessing. "Mr. Thompson, I understand you're my daughter's landlord." "That's right, sir. Though she's become much more than just a tenant to me." Marcus felt Emma squeeze his hand under the table, giving him strength. David's eyes narrowed slightly. "Indeed. Emma tells me you work at the community college." "I'm a maintenance supervisor there, yes." "And you feel qualified to provide guidance to my daughter regarding her future?" Marcus met David's stare directly. "I feel qualified to support Emma in whatever choices she makes for herself. She's one of the most intelligent, capable people I've ever met." "Mr. Thompson, I appreciate your fondness for Emma, but surely you understand that she has responsibilities and opportunities that extend far beyond what you can provide her." Emma's hand tightened on Marcus's. "Father, Marcus has provided me with something I never had at home, the chance to be valued for who I am, not what I represent for the family business." David leaned back in his chair, studying both of them. "Emma, you've made your point about independence. You've lived on your own for several months, managed your finances, maintained your grades. I'm proud of what you've accomplished." Marcus could see Emma relaxing slightly at her father's approval. "However," David continued, It's time to end this experiment and return to reality. The board has been patient, but there are decisions that need to be made about the company's future and your role in it. What if I'm not ready to take on that role yet? Emma asked. Then you'll learn as you go, the same way I did when I took over from my father. Emma, you have a gift for business strategy. I've seen your college projects. They're more sophisticated than presentations I receive from senior executives. Marcus watched the conversation, seeing how David Richardson skillfully applied both praise and pressure to guide Emma toward the decision he wanted. Mr. Thompson, David turned his attention back to Marcus. I'm curious about your intentions regarding my daughter. Marcus felt the weight of the question. This was the moment he'd been preparing for. Sir, I care about Emma very much. My intentions are to support her in achieving whatever goals make her happy, whether that includes me or not. How noble, David said, though his tone suggested he wasn't entirely convinced. And if those goals include taking her place in a billion-dollar company, are you prepared to be part of that world? Marcus glanced at Emma, who was watching him intently. Mr. Richardson, I'm not going to pretend I understand your world or that I'd fit into it easily, but I know Emma, and I know she's capable of succeeding at whatever she chooses to do. If she decides she wants to be part of your company, I'll support that decision. Even if it means living in a world where people will constantly question your motives for being with her? The question hit closer to home than Marcus cared to admit. He'd already started worrying about exactly that scenario. Father, stop, Emma interrupted. Marcus has never asked me for anything. He's never even mentioned my family's money except to tell me it doesn't matter to him. David smiled, but it wasn't a warm expression. Emma, you're young and idealistic. Mr. Thompson seems like a decent man, but you can't ignore the reality of the situation. The media attention alone would be overwhelming for someone in his position. As if on cue, David's phone buzzed. He glanced at it and his expression grew serious. Speaking of media attention, he said, showing them his phone screen. It appears someone has already taken an interest in this situation. Marcus looked at the phone and felt his stomach drop. It was a gossip blog post titled, Richardson Heiress Slumming It, with a photo of him and Emma sitting on his front porch from the previous evening. Emma's face went pale as she read the article. How did they even know to look for me there? Emma, when you're part of this family, there are always people watching, David said more gently. This is exactly why I wanted you to come home. Marcus read the article over Emma's shoulder. It described him as a working-class maintenance worker who has somehow convinced the Richardson heiress to play house in his modest neighborhood home. The tone was mocking and suggested he was taking advantage of a naive young woman. This is exactly what I was afraid of, Marcus said quietly. Emma looked at him with alarm. Marcus, you can't let this change anything between us. Emma, maybe your father is right. Maybe I'm not equipped for this kind of scrutiny. David watched their interaction with interest. Mr. Thompson, I respect that you care about Emma, but surely you can see how impossible this situation would become. The media attention, the constant questions about your motives, the pressure on both of you. It would destroy whatever genuine feelings exist between you. Marcus felt Emma's hand slip from his as she pulled back in her chair. The confidence and happiness that had been building between them over the past few months seemed to crumble in real time. I need some air, Emma said, standing abruptly and walking toward the restaurant's patio. David and Marcus sat in uncomfortable silence for a moment. Mr. Thompson, I want you to know that I don't necessarily think you're a bad person, David said finally. But I've seen what this kind of attention can do to relationships. I've seen good people turn bitter when they're constantly questioned and criticized. Emma deserves better than that. She deserves to make her own choices, Marcus replied. Yes, but sometimes protecting the people we love means making difficult decisions for their benefit. Marcus looked out toward the patio where Emma was standing with her back to them, her posture rigid with stress. What exactly are you asking me to do? David leaned forward. I'm asking you to consider what's best for Emma's future. She has the potential to do incredible things with her life, to make a real impact on the world through the resources our family can provide. But she can't do that if she's constantly defending her personal relationships or dealing with media scrutiny about her private life. Marcus felt trapped. Everything David was saying made logical sense, but it felt wrong in his heart. And if I step aside, then Emma can focus on her education, her future role in the company, and finding someone from her own world who can truly understand the pressures she'll face. When Emma returned to the table, she could clearly sense the tension between the two men. "What did I miss?" she asked, though her tone suggested she could guess. "Your father was explaining to me how difficult it would be for us to have any kind of future together," Marcus said honestly. Emma's eyes flashed with anger. "Father, you had no right to—" "Emma, he's not wrong," Marcus interrupted. "That article is just the beginning. If we continue this relationship, you'll spend your life defending me instead of living your own life." Emma stared at him in disbelief. "Marcus, are you giving up on us because of one stupid gossip article?" Marcus looked at this incredible woman who had brought so much joy into his life over the past few months. The thought of letting her go felt like tearing out his own heart, but he could also see the truth in her father's warnings. "I'm trying to think about what's best for you," he said quietly. Emma's eyes filled with tears. "What's best for me is being with someone who loves me for who I am, not what I can do for their business interests or social status." She stood up from the table and looked between Marcus and her father. "I see what this is. You've both decided what's best for me without bothering to ask what I want." Emma grabbed her purse and walked toward the restaurant exit, leaving both men sitting at the table in stunned silence. David signaled for the check. "Mr. Thompson, I hope you'll think carefully about our conversation. Sometimes the most loving thing we can do is let someone go." Marcus sat alone at the table after David left, staring at his untouched meal and wondering if he'd just made the biggest mistake of his life. Marcus drove home in silence, replaying the restaurant conversation over and over in his mind. When he arrived at the house, Emma's car wasn't in the driveway. He sat in his truck for a long moment, staring at the "room for rent" sign that was still crooked in his front yard, the sign that had started this whole complicated, beautiful, heartbreaking situation. Inside, the house felt different. Emma's textbooks were still scattered across the kitchen table. Her coffee mug still sat in the sink, but the warmth that had filled the space over the past few months seemed to have disappeared along with her. Marcus found a note on the kitchen counter, written in Emma's careful handwriting. "Marcus, I've gone to stay with my friend Sarah from school for a few days while I think about everything. I don't want either of us to make decisions based on fear or pressure. Please don't give up on us yet. Emma." That evening, Marcus's phone rang. It was his sister, Jennifer, calling from across the country. "Marcus, I just saw the most interesting article online," she said without preamble. "Something about you dating a billionaire's daughter. Please tell me this isn't some kind of joke." Marcus sank into his couch, realizing the story was spreading beyond local gossip blogs. "It's not a joke, Jen. It's also probably not going to work out." "Why not? Is she not who you thought she was?" "No, she's exactly who I thought she was. That's the problem. She's incredible, and I'm just me." Jennifer was quiet for a moment. "Marcus, do you remember when I wanted to go to that fancy art school in New York, but I was scared I wasn't sophisticated enough to fit in? You told me I was being ridiculous and that talent didn't care about someone's background." "Exactly. And what did you tell me?" Marcus smiled, despite his mood. "I told you that the people worth knowing wouldn't care where you came from, and the people who cared weren't worth knowing. So why doesn't that same logic apply to you?" Before Marcus could answer, there was a knock at his front door. He looked out the window and saw David Richardson's silver sedan in his driveway. "Jen, I have to go. Emma's father is here." "Marcus, whatever he says to you, remember that the only opinion that matters is Emma's." David Richardson stood on Marcus's front porch, looking less intimidating than he had at the restaurant. He seemed tired, older somehow. "Mr. Thompson, may I come in? I'd like to continue our conversation from earlier." Marcus led him into the living room, noticing how David's eyes took in the modest furnishings and family photos on the walls. "I owe you an apology," David said, surprising Marcus. "After you both left the restaurant, I had some time to think about what Emma said. She was right. We were making decisions about her life without consulting her. Marcus gestured for David to sit down. What changed your mind? David smiled ruefully. My wife. When I got home and told Victoria what had happened, she reminded me of something I'd forgotten. When we met, she was a baker's daughter and I was already being groomed to take over the family business. My father had the same concerns about her that I've been having about you. This revelation surprised Marcus. Victoria Richardson had seemed so perfectly suited to her wealthy lifestyle. How did you handle the pressure? Badly, at first. I let my father's concerns make me doubt Victoria's motives and my own judgment. I broke up with her because I thought it was the mature, responsible thing to do. But you obviously got back together. David nodded. 6 months later, I realized I'd made the biggest mistake of my life. Victoria had moved on and was engaged to someone else, a nice man from her own social circle who her parents approved of. Marcus leaned forward, invested in the story despite himself. It took me 2 years to convince her to give me another chance. 2 years of proving that I valued her more than I feared what other people would think. We've been married 32 years now, and she's been my strongest partner in everything I've accomplished. What are you saying, Mr. Richardson? David looked around Marcus's living room again, his expression thoughtful. I'm saying that I recognize the way Emma looks at you. It's the same way Victoria looked at me when we were young, and I remember what it felt like to almost lose that because I was too worried about what other people would think. Marcus felt a spark of hope but tried to keep his expectations realistic. What about all those concerns you raised earlier? The media attention, the social pressures? They're all real, David admitted. Emma's life will never be completely private, and dating her will subject you to scrutiny you've never experienced. But Emma is strong enough to handle that pressure. And if you care about her as much as I think you do, you might be stronger than you realize too. Why the change? Of heart? David was quiet for a moment. Because I saw how Emma looked when she walked out of that restaurant. I haven't seen her that devastated since her grandmother died. And I realized that my job isn't to control her life. It's to support her in living the life that makes her happy. Marcus felt the weight of possibility settling over him. What if I'm not good enough for her? Mr. Thompson, Emma has been surrounded by wealth and privilege her entire life. Do you know what she talks about when she calls home? She talks about the cookies you make together on Sunday mornings. She talks about how you listen to her opinions about business strategy without trying to dismiss or redirect her ideas. She talks about feeling valued for who she is, not what she represents. David stood up and walked over to look at a family photo on Marcus's mantle. Emma told me something tonight when she called to yell at me for interfering in her life. She said you were the first person who ever encouraged her to use her intelligence and education instead of trying to protect her from the challenges they might bring. She called to yell at you? David chuckled. My daughter has quite a temper when someone threatens something she cares about. She made it very clear that she's willing to walk away from the family business entirely if I don't start respecting her choices. Marcus sat back in his chair processing this information. She'd really do that? Marcus, Emma has been preparing to take over Richardson Industries since she was 12 years old. The fact that she's willing to give that up to be with you should tell you exactly how much you mean to her. David walked back over and sat down across from Marcus again. I have a proposition for you. I'm listening. Come to my birthday party tomorrow night. Meet Emma's extended family. See what her world really looks like and let her show everyone who you are. If you can handle one evening of that pressure, then you'll have a better sense of whether you can handle a lifetime of it. Marcus thought about Emma's note, about her asking him not to give up on them yet. What if her family doesn't accept me? Then they'll learn to, David said firmly. Emma is going to be a very powerful woman someday, and the people in her life will respect her choices whether they initially approve of them or not. David stood up to leave, then turned back to Marcus. One more thing. That article online? My public relations team has already contacted the website. It'll be removed by morning, and they'll be more careful about printing unsubstantiated gossip about my family in the future. After David left, Marcus sat in his quiet house and thought about everything that had happened over the past few months. Emma had walked into his life as a shy, uncertain student and had become a confident, passionate woman who challenged him to be better than he thought he could be. He picked up his phone and dialed Emma's number. "Marcus?" She answered on the first ring, her voice hopeful and nervous. "Emma, I'm sorry about today. I let fear make my decisions instead of trusting what I know to be true." "What do you know to be true?" Marcus smiled, feeling more certain than he had all day. "I know that you're the best thing that's ever happened to me. I know that whatever challenges we face, we're stronger together than apart. And I know that I love you too much to let anyone else's opinion convince me to give up on us." Emma was quiet for a moment, and when she spoke again, Marcus could hear that she was crying. "I love you too, Marcus. I was so scared that you were going to let my father talk you out of taking a chance on us. Never again. Emma, your father invited me to his birthday party tomorrow night. Will you go with me? Are you sure you're ready for that? It's going to be intimidating. Hundreds of people, lots of media attention, everyone wanting to know who you are and why you're there." Marcus thought about the shy young woman who had knocked on his door just a few months ago, asking about a room for rent. "Emma, you were brave enough to leave everything you knew to prove you could succeed on your own. The least I can do is be brave enough to stand beside you while you do it." Emma laughed through her tears. "In that case, Mr. Thompson, I'd be honored to have you as my date tomorrow night. Fair warning, though, you're going to need a tuxedo." Marcus looked around his modest living room and grinned. "I guess it's time for me to learn how the other half lives." "Marcus? Yeah? Thank you for not giving up on us. Emma, you taught me that the best things in life are worth fighting for. I'm not giving up on us now." As Marcus hung up the phone, he realized that his simple life was about to become much more complicated, but he also realized that complicated didn't necessarily mean bad. Sometimes the most worthwhile things in life required taking risks and stepping outside your comfort zone. Tomorrow night, he would walk into a world of wealth and privilege that he'd never imagined being part of. But he wouldn't be going alone. He'd be going with Emma. Brilliant, determined, kind-hearted Emma who had chosen him not because of what he could provide, but because of who he was. For the first time since this whole adventure had started, Marcus felt ready for whatever came next.